Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since I've made a video. Normally I'm kind of walking around different churches filming, you know, the ancient churches and the interiors and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I try and make a video that kind of, you know, conveys something about the Christian faith, or you know, it's along the lines of a personal testimony, and that's kind of more along the lines of what today's video is about. I'm going to be telling you about something that happened to me, you know, sort of 30 years ago. You know, basically I had like what I can only describe as, you know, don't call me crazy, like a massive supernatural experience. Now this happened in 1990, and you know, at the time I was just like a normal kid, you know, doing all this sort of stuff that like normal kids do, you know, skateboarding, hanging out with friends, you know, flirting with girls, you know, all the usual kind of stuff that kids get up to. Let me just kind of, you know, it's going to be impossible to tell you all of the detail in this video because there's just too much stuff that has gone on, but just let me kind of, you know, tell you a little bit about, you know, the run up to that period and, you know, what happened and so on. So basically we used to live in Birmingham in the West Midlands, and you know, at that time I was like a little bit dyslexic, so I had a little bit of difficulty reading and writing. This was like years ago, so, you know, 35, you know, well, probably 40 years ago. Yeah, certainly getting on that way, 1980, something like that. You know, and I went to a private school, etc, etc, etc. You know, perhaps I got mixed up in the wrong crowd. I think we all do. You know, we get mixed up with the wrong people who, you know, are maybe into things they shouldn't be into, you know, or whatever it is, like witchcraft or stealing money, or you know, or you know, and it varies by age. You know, as people grow out of their teenage years, you know, they grow a bit more hardcore and get into different things, and so probably got mixed up in you know, with, you know, some of the wrong people, to be honest. I was very proud at that time, you know, I had this kind of self-belief, you know, that I was creating my own destiny and I was responsible for creating my own success, and I was working, you know, all hours to, you know, try and propel myself into, you know, great glory and all the rest of it, which at the time I didn't realise was, you know, sinful, you know, because I didn't even believe there was like a God at that time. But I was doing some work experience in Portsmouth at the time. This was the year 1990. I was renting like a, you know, room in a house in North End in Portsmouth, I believe. And around about 3:30 in the morning, one morning, I can't remember what day it was, I wake like really peacefully, you know, like very, very peacefully. And I was wide awake, so, you know, I wasn't, you know, on drugs or anything. And what I saw, well, no, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Basically, what happened is through the wall, I saw like a spirit come through the wall, which I instantly recognised as like the Holy Spirit, you know, and all its kind of glory with like the different orbs and stuff like that around it, and the holiness emanating from it. And it kind of went around me. It did like a full circle around me and then exited through the window and then pivoted again and went into the house next door. And you know, that kind of puzzled me. And you know, it kind of, you know, I mentioned it to my parents at the time. I would have been 19 at the time. I don't think they believed it. Excuse me, I don't think they believed it either. And sort of 6 months had passed and I still, you know, hadn't really, you know, clocked what happened to me, to be honest, or, you know, taken it seriously enough. And I was back down in Cornwall at this time, in the family home. I still would have been, you know, maybe late 19 or early age 20 or something like that. And I was alone at home one night and I saw like this kind of, you know, deathly hooded figure kind of walked straight. I was sitting in the kitchen looking down the hallway, you know, and I saw this like deathly hooded figure walk through the family sofa, and you know, that was the moment I realised that I was in trouble. You know, if I didn't understand what for, but that was the moment I realised I was in trouble. So, you know, when I went to, I didn't tell anybody about that. When I went to bed that evening, this was like many years ago, I had this like unused Bible in the wardrobe, literally covered in dust, like inch thick in dust. And I took it out of my wardrobe and kept it next to me that night. And honestly, I never slept so well since that night. I slept like it was absolutely heavenly. And looking back, that was the moment I kind of became sort of spiritually born again, so to speak. And since that event, I've kind of regarded myself as Christian, and it's been a journey. It's not like a light switch where these things happen and all of a sudden everything's hunky-dory and stuff. It's been a massive journey. The journey never ends. It's like SEO, the journey never ends. But when I look back now in the year 2025 to what I was like in the year 1990, I'm a completely different person. I may look kind of cool and trendy, or still relatively young for my age and stuff, which I suppose is a fair comment. But inside, especially like mentally, and how I think, and about what is right and wrong, the process which because we all get tempted by different things, whatever it might be. But I'm much more, I'm not saying I don't fall, I'm not saying I don't have any sin, because everyone's fallen short of the glory of God. But one thing I can say is it's completely changed me. There were a number of other divine, spiritual, supernatural experiences that have gone on over years, and I'll get into that some more in some different videos. In one of them, I got given the Psalm 118, and the next day I got a Bible with that illustration, and I definitely made the connection there, and that basically just reconfirmed everything that happened to me. Now that psalm is it's actually a psalm of victory. So whilst there are or have been challenges, and I got into quite a lot of trouble for some of the sin in my life, the psalm ultimately is a psalm of victory with Jesus' return, and it mentions that I won't die, and I haven't died, I haven't been ill in all those years, and it's completely changed my life, profoundly changed my life. To many people it's all nonsense. If you mention this stuff to people down the pub or whatever, they'll tell you, you're taking drugs or you're mentally ill or whatever. I've had all that, don't worry about it. But I can categorically assure you, I haven't taken drugs, I'm not mentally ill, I'm 100% all there. But yeah, the reason I made this video is because I just want people to know that there is really a God. It's not nonsense. And unfortunately a lot of people think it is, and they only turn to God when something goes wrong, or when a family member dies and everybody's lined up in the church or the crematorium for the final service and stuff. So look, I'm going to keep this video very short. I don't want to kind of make it any longer than this, because it will lose people's attention span, and maybe it will wander off into other areas. It's such a deep subject. I will make some more videos, and I'll try to pick up more or less from where I left off on this video. But ultimately I just want to kind of reach out to you, just ultimately don't ignore it, because a lot of people will kind of try and give you this nonsense, if you like, that we live in a secular society and everyone's can create their own success, everyone can be who they want to be, and it's absolutely not true. Everything that happens on earth is a reflection of what happens in the spiritual realm, and there is a war going on, by the way, in the spiritual realm between good and evil. So between Lucifer, who was an archangel who was cast down to earth with his angels, like a third of the angels, so they're demons, and the forces of God. So there is like a spiritual war going on, whether you realize it or not. And I just want to kind of encourage you to spend a bit of time every day, trying to seek God. You spend a bit of time in prayer, spend a bit of time reading the Bible, because unbeknown to people, these things are real. I accept that many people watching this video think it's a complete load of nonsense, but I can categorically tell you it's not nonsense. And you will fare much better and live much longer and have a much more healthy, peaceful, trouble-free life if you can try and align yourself with God, specifically to Jesus Christ, the Son of God, Not everyone will accept that, but that's, you know, what I was taught. And when I say that's what I was taught, that's the message I got from the divine realm. So I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you for watching, and I hope you join me on the next video, and I'll try and pick up from where I've left off on this one. So take care, and I'll see you soon.